Everybody to New Mexico's second webinar, and our webinar today is called The Process of Collaboration, a Case Study, and it's being presented by New Mexico Allies for Advocacy Incorporated, which is a nonprofit 501c3, and we'll talk a little bit more about that organization later in the presentation, in partnership with the Southwest Institute Alliance Project. And we're presenting today on September 28, 2016, but if you have anyone that you think would like to watch this and listen to it, they can go to the Southwest Institute website and link into it to watch it at any time. So welcome today. And my name, next slide please. My name is Nat Dean, and there's a picture of me on the far left, which is myself and my service dog Tommy, and I'm part of the team that's been part of this project with the Southwest Institute. Lindsay?
Yep, and the middle picture is me. I'm Lindsay Sloan, and that is my now retired guide dog Chantal. So she's no longer here, but she's still cute, so she's in the picture.
Mariela?
And then the last one is me. I'm Mariela Pijem, and I am part of the New Mexico Allies and also Parents Reaching Out.
Next slide. Esther may not be here, but Esther Trujillo is in Gallup, New Mexico, and hopefully she'll be joining us. She's part of our team to put together the work that we're doing in New Mexico to assist in this project of self-advocacy. And next is Cynthia. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Cynthia Berkheimer, and I'm here today.
Thank you for being here, everybody. Next slide, please.
All right. So this is just a list of our team members again. We've got some pictures that are quite fun. We also have some advisory members. Daniel Ekman, who is actually the office that Cynthia's in his office right now, and he might show up here at some point. And also Adam Shand, who works at Parents Reaching Out.
Next slide, please. So our topic today is collaboration. So what is collaboration? Collaboration means to work jointly with others in a partnership, to partner with others who have mutual interests, people who have similar things that they would like to do together or similar goals, and to work together as a team to reach a shared or common goal, and to try and combine resources in a new way so that you can go further with what you have. And some places will have different things that one other place doesn't have, and combining those resources can make a new path. Next slide, please. Cynthia, would you like to tell us about the model of New Mexico Allies?
Okay, I'm a model New Mexico Allies for Advocacy Incorporation, using collaboration to create a nonprofit organization to address unmet needs in disability communities throughout New Mexico.
So we came together to create a nonprofit organization because we saw things that were missing and in New Mexico that we could maybe help meet those needs. Next slide, please.
In March of 2011, a delegation of advocates from New Mexico attended the Allies for Advocacy regional meeting, and that was planned by the Administration for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities in Los Angeles, California.
Next slide, please. So the meeting's goal was to strengthen self-advocacy teams and movements in the southwestern states, and we have a map that shows the region that we're talking about in the southwestern area that was at that particular meeting in 2011, and the other regions that are indicated were other groups that were part of that regional meeting that came together. Next slide, please. Mariella, can you give us this one?
Yes. So the regional meeting gave rise to New Mexico Allies for Advocacy. And we are an organization that, first of all, we're independent. And we are grassroots, which means we started with advocates themselves, self-advocates. And we include all disabilities. It's not just one disability. And we include all organizations. And it is operated for and by self-advocates.
Next slide, please.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the structure of Allies a little bit. In 2013, New Mexico Allies for Advocacy was formed into a nonprofit organization. Another term for that is a 501c3, which Nat mentioned earlier. And that allows, having 501c3 status allows Allies to apply for money from more sources, using funds from other groups while remaining independent.
And a 501c3 is a status within the Internal Revenue Service, or the IRS, that allows us to operate in a non-taxable setting. Next slide, please. Our very first funding as our seed funding to start our organization came from AIDD, and that acronym, and an acronym is the initials of an organization's name, was the Administration on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. And that came through the AUCD, which is the Association of University Centers on Disabilities. And Association of University Centers on Disabilities, the one we have in New Mexico, is the Center for Development and Disability. And there are many of them around the country that offer services and resources for people with disabilities through different university programs. So they provided the mini grant to help New Mexico Allies for Advocacy apply for our nonprofit status, which is kind of a big process of a lot of paperwork and a lot of coming up with what your officers will be and your bylaws and how that works. And one of the earlier webinars presented by this larger project talked about officer roles within nonprofit organizations. So you could look back at that on the website for the Southwest Institute if you wanted to learn more about that. Next slide for Mariella.
So as I mentioned earlier, our group is formed by people with disabilities for people with disabilities, and it includes an executive board of directors, specialized subcommittees, like for example an advocacy subcommittee, or it means smaller groups that will take charge of different topics. And we are stakeholders, or we have stakeholders, which are members. Next slide.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and read our mission statement. The mission and purpose of New Mexico Allies for Advocacy is to bring together self-advocates, advocates, and communities from across New Mexico to unite and educate the general public about disability issues to improve inclusion, decrease discrimination, enhance quality of life, and community participation with full access.
A mission statement is a very important piece of a nonprofit organization because it helps guide all of the things that we do. And when we can always look back to our mission statement to reorient ourselves, and we can also use our mission statement to help explain to others what we're doing. So it's a very important piece of forming an organization. Next slide, please. So the activities that New Mexico Allies for Advocacy is involved in, our activities include educational outreach about disability. We do a lot of conference sessions, and we do a lot of presentations at different places, be it a conference or a center or someone's office or anybody, a school. a club who would like to learn more about disability. We also design disability awareness curricula, and a big project that we've been working on is disability history awareness, and bringing curricula means like the materials that would go into a class or a course and how that would flow. So we are designing actual classes, and we have devised and published a curriculum that we use in the schools. Another activity is we build community by bringing people together. We inform disability-related policy, which means that we work on trying to bring public policy forward in the New Mexico State Legislature and also the federal government legislature that's disability-related, so that we can preserve what's working, change what's not working and make it better, and make new programs where there are missing pieces. And we also do other activities as we become aware of the need for them. Next slide, please.
So all these activities that Nat mentioned and New Mexico Allies Focus placed us as New Mexico Allies in a perfect position to look for and accept resources that would allow them to go to the next, or allow us rather, to go to the next level to strengthen and grow the disability and self-advocacy movement.
Next slide, Cynthia.
Now, what's next for New Mexico?
Yay, New Mexico! Next slide, Mariella.
So the next step, the first one, was that we noticed that there were a lot of self-advocates all over the state, but everybody was working by themselves. So we thought it would be a good idea to bring them together and work as a team.
Next slide, please. So what was decided to be done was to call a statewide meeting. And we found that there were many diverse self-advocacy groups and agencies, and that we needed to come together to chart the course toward a shared vision for the future of the self-advocacy movement in New Mexico. So we brought a lot of different organizations and people together into one place so that we could focus in a very intensive meeting on what the future of this would be. On the next slide, please, Cynthia will tell us who it was that was invited to the meeting.
Next up, form for statewide meeting. Key players were invited, including New Mexico Developmental Disability Planning Council, DDPC, the ARC of New Mexico, the ARC, the New Mexico Department of Health, Parents Reaching Out, or the FLOW.
Next slide, please.
Next up, form statewide meeting, New Mexico Developmental Disability Support Division, New Mexico Allies for Advocacy, New Mexico People First, chapters all around the state.
Thank you. Next slide. So in calling the statewide meeting, 19 self-advocates and advocates, and when we say self-advocates, we mean a person with a disability who does advocacy, not just for themselves, but they are a person with a disability doing advocacy. And then advocates, which is generally people who don't have a disability and may work on their own, or may work with an organization or an agency, or they may be parents. Sometimes parents are of a person with a disability. Sometimes a parent is also called a self-advocate. They arrived from all corners of New Mexico and worked with a professional facilitator. His name was Mark. And this is a picture of all of the people, except I'm not in the picture because I was taking the pictures, all the people who came to the meeting, and the person leaning over the table at the end next to the easel is Mark, our facilitator. Next slide, please. Cynthia.
Next up, colon statewide meaning of efforts. Chart the course toward a shared vision for the self-advocacy movement in New Mexico. See the chart on the right side, meaning purpose, chart the course toward shared vision for the self-advocacy movement in New Mexico. That's what it says on it.
Thank you. And we worked on this plan by using big Post-it notes and the two little colors that you see in the photograph, and we'll talk more about that later. But we were to think of issues in 12 to 15 words, and that would clearly express our idea using an example as subpoint and the examples being concrete. Next slide, please, Mariella.
Yes. So at the meeting, there were 3 key questions that were addressed. The first one was, what is happening now that we need to recognize, appreciate, and address? So what are we looking for? What are we going to do? What should we be aware of? And then understanding the situation makes us think about possible solutions. So it was important that we understand what was going on for New Mexico.
Next slide, please. The next question was, where do we want to be as a group 1 to 2 years from now? And our answer for that was we wanted to have a shared vision of the future so that we can navigate forward, so that we could decide how exactly were we going to maneuver our way ahead and follow some kind of map. Next slide, please. And the third question was, how will we move forward together toward a shared vision? And our answer was we were to make 3 to 6 months, so 3-month or 6-month action steps with specific assignments so that the work would actually get done. Next slide, please.
So to do this, we followed the SMART action planning model, which Mark explained to us, which is pretty neat, and that's what the picture is on the left-hand side of your screen. And what that means is, so obviously SMART is an acronym. So S is for specific goals, M is for measurable goals, so that means something that you can track to see if what you're doing is actually working. Attainable, which means, again, is your goal actually something that you can do? Relevant, relevant is is it helpful? And time-bound, which means basically what is the how much time is this goal going to take, and is it something that can be done in a relatively timely fashion? Next slide, please. So we broke up into groups, as you can see by all these pictures, and within each of our groups we were talking about what were the advocacy, what was going on in different regions as far as advocacy with the different groups, and what goals did each person have. Again, 10 to 15 words, very concise and very clear goals, and we were writing them on those sticky notes that you will see a lot of for the rest of this presentation. Next slide, please.
Here we are in the big book and talk about what's going on in the big book.
So we all came back together again in the big group after meeting together as separate groups. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
And then all of the Post-it notes, the big Post-it notes that we wrote using the SMART, the S-M-A-R-T plan, were put up on a big wall. And if you look at this picture, you'll see, and for those that can't see the picture, on the left-hand side is some of the people sitting at the table looking at the big wall where all the Post-it notes have been put up. And there are pink ones and orange ones and green ones. And then Mark is our facilitator, is holding his arms out and gesturing at this big wall with probably 75 or 80 post-it notes on it, each with a different one of our issues on it. So he's gesturing, saying, wow, look at all this. Next slide. So we looked at each one of the different points that the groups had come up with and written down on the papers, on the post-it note papers, and we started to think about how would we organize these? What were the major themes that came out of the groups meeting together and discussing what was important? Next slide, please. Mariella.
Yes. So out of that meeting, 3 major themes emerged. First of all, what activities, groups, and funding are currently in place? So what are our resources right now? Second, what major issues needed to be addressed? And the third one is the need to develop a statewide collaborative plan or agreement. So we wanted to do that as soon as possible.
Next slide, please.
It was the
Outcomes
okay.
was decided to, I don't understand that word.
We were decided to consolidate the group to make the group more closely knit.
Oh, it was decided to put the group 9 to 12 key players to meet in a month and have to focus on building and implementing
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure for something movement.
A sustainable movement. So what we wanted to do was build, like you look at a building and you see that it has a skeleton when you're first starting to put it up. And then you put the walls in there, and then inside of the walls you put the appliances and the light switches and the electrical. So we needed to build an infrastructure for a sustainable movement. And by sustainable, we mean that it could keep on going for a long period of time. And then everybody left the meeting and rode into the sunset, and that's a New Mexico famous sunset, right out of my back door. Next slide, please. So then we all left, we went home, we thought about what was important next, and then give us our next slide. We came back again for our second statewide meeting. So we had this time 12 self-advocates and advocates, came from every corner of New Mexico, and we worked with the same professional facilitator. And there's a photograph of our table in a half circle, again looking at how we were going to examine the issues, working with our facilitator, Mark. Next slide, please. For this meeting, we used an image of a star, and the star had 5 different prongs, 5 different points to it. The top one was to focus on a collaboration plan. The second one on the left was regular communication, which meant we had to have engagement. On the next one below that on the left was we needed to have resources or money, or donations of goods and services that we could utilize if it wasn't actual dollars. On the next point of the star was coordination needed to happen. So we needed to identify a central agency or central group to be able to coordinate all of this. And then the next point of the star was engagement, which is like statewide conferences and other forums where we could engage people and bring them together to reach the focus of the collaboration plan. And this in the center of the star says the New Mexico Self-Advocacy Movement. Next slide.
So our goals were to develop a 1-year plan using the SMART model also. And so here you see the different colored sticky notes. The middle two are actually two different colors. They're really kind of hard to tell, or at least it's hard to tell for me. So our red or pink sticky notes would be the objective, so that would be what are we doing. The yellow, which is the middle one, is actions, so that's how will it happen, how will our goal get done. And then the green, which believe it or not is the bottom sticky, is a time frame. And that kind of encompasses who is going to do the action and when is that action going to be completed. Next slide, please.
Cynthia. So what we did in the next group, and Cynthia and Barbara and Daniel are in the picture on the bottom right-hand corner, working on these different notes, and then in the upper left-hand corner is a photograph of yellow notes, pink notes, and you can't really tell the green color, but you can see like one of the notes said develop and implement a social media campaign. Another one said in-kind contributions, donations, and sponsorship. So each of the notes was one of the different items that Lindsay just mentioned. Next slide. So as we worked on these, everybody got a chance to talk about what they thought was important. So everybody got an opportunity to hold the mic. And in the upper left-hand corner, Adam Shand is speaking. In the upper right-hand corner, Daniel Ekman is speaking. Adam Shand is with Parents Reaching Out. Daniel Ekman is a self-advocate and with the Center for Self-Advocacy. And then in the lower left-hand corner is Barbara Ibanez at the microphone, who's the Deputy Director of the Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. And then the next one is John Block, who's the Executive Director of the Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. Those are just examples of a few people, but everybody got a chance to talk. Next slide, please. So as we began to drill down or focus more intently on the details of each of our points, we put them in different categories up on the board, up on the big wall, and there's photographs of Mark putting them up on the board in different categories, and we were putting them up in the order of importance and order of when things would get done.
Right.
Next slide.
1 second, actually. So the pink or the red would be your objective, and then to the right of that is going to be the action, and then to the right of that is going to be the time frame. So it's kind of set up in rows and columns, kind of both. But does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Next slide, please. So what we kind of wanted to end up doing was shift from volume to quality and focus. So instead of doing 50 presentations a year, as an example, do more like 25, but make sure that those presentations are focused on issues that affect the communities that they are being presented in. And we also wanted to shift from a concept, so like an issue, to an action and resolving that issue. And then again, more sticky notes. Thank you. Next slide.
Mariella.
Yes. So at the second statewide meeting, we identified that it's important to improve our communication and outreach. So it's important to be able to find more self-advocates or organizations that work with self-advocates and include them. Establish and sustain coordinated efforts. So once we've done that outreach and we've met other organizations and other advocates, then make sure that we are coordinating, make sure that we are all in the same page and that we're working towards the same goals. And then find a way to increase funding and program resources. So we definitely need to find more resources to support this effort. Next slide.
Next slide, please, Mariella.
Okay. So at that meeting, we identified some strengths and weaknesses that, for the group. which means what we do well and what we're not that good of. We needed to identify capacity, which means what we can actually do, and identify specific goals or deliverables, something that we want to make happen. Let's say it's maybe it's a workshop, maybe it's a conference, so we're working towards that goal. And then identify how we're going to do this. So we need to break it down in smaller tasks and set timelines or set a time frame in which to work.
Next slide, please. So when we talk about deliverables, deliverables must have a specific due date so that something happens in a calendar and gets done by a specific time, because if something doesn't happen first, the second thing can't happen, the third thing can't happen. Or if we jump the gun, something's going to be incomplete. We needed to be clear with our deliverables about what will happen at an event or a project, and it needs they need to be measurable, such as how much of something has happened and how good or bad it was. And we use evaluations to measure things like that. And they also need to satisfy a milestone that was created in a project plan and represents the completion of something major. So a milestone can be, for an example, turning 21 and you're an adult, or turning 18 and you're an adult. That's an example of what a milestone might be in your personal life, but we're extending the milestones to professional life. Next slide, please, Lindsay.
So the final results of our collaboration. At the close of the second meeting, it was agreed that New Mexico Allies for Advocacy, yay, would be the best suited organization to manage funds for distribution throughout the state in a coordinated effort to further the self-advocacy movement. And that was super exciting. I didn't see that coming. I don't know if anyone saw that coming, but that was super cool. Next slide, please.
So when we had these meetings, they were all day long meetings. So this wasn't like sit down and do this in an hour or two. This was like all day long, 2 very long days that we did a lot of preparation for. So Cynthia, what were the final results of our collaboration?
Oh, the final result of our collaboration. Everybody came away feeling empowered to do their part in building a new and better community in our state, the land of enchantment. The land of enchantment.
Next slide, please. Thank you.
Welcome.
So the final results of our collaboration was together we succeeded in using the art of collaboration to bring communities together in unity where there had been separation. And at the end of the day, everyone came away happy. So let the work begin. Next slide, please. Now we'd like to open it up to question and answer. So if George can unmute everybody's microphone so they can ask us questions, and you can speak up whenever you think of something. And what I'm going to ask George to do, he's in Arizona at the Southwest Institute, is to go to the next slide while we're talking about questions, so that if you have a question that you would like to contact us at a later date about, you can email myself, Nat Dean, or you can email Lindsay Sloan, and our emails are on this slide. And in the upper left-hand corner is the logo for New Mexico Allies for Advocacy, and our motto is, if there's a will, there's a way, and then our state flag on the right, our sun sign, the Zia sun sign. Does anybody have any questions? Wow, we must have done a really good job of explaining this process. Is there anything that anyone would like to add?
We do have one question, and it's by Barbara Ibanez. The question is, what strategies are you doing to make the work begin?
One of the things that we're doing is we're holding meetings of smaller groups and also holding meetings of the key players out of this this very large statewide gathering that we had, where we're identifying very specific things that each person can do. One of the things that I'm working on, for example, along with Suzanne at the Center for Self-Advocacy, is developing communication checklists so that, for instance, when we talk to funders, we always have our elevator speech, and what an elevator speech is, how can you talk in 1 minute or even less about what you are and what your goals are and what you're doing, what you plan to bring to something in a very succinct statement, so we can open any communications we have with that statement. And then with each type of communication we have, we're making a record of it. So I'm developing a standardized type of form where the form may look similar, but that you can check a box to say we were speaking to a possible funder, and a funder would be someone who might give you goods and services or money, or we were speaking with a potential stakeholder, which would be a member, or we were taking notes at a meeting. And then we also want to make a report form for committee meetings, so that when subcommittees meet, we have a standardized way of tracking what was discussed. And we also talked a little bit about having a social media director, which would also be a media director, social media being Facebook, Instagram, whatever social media tools we might use, and also media being television, newspaper, magazine, radio, and things of that nature. What other things might you like to add?
I'm also working on compiling a list, a contact list for all, well, not all, but for advocates around the state, so that we can have easier communication with everyone. That is in process as of right now.
Another thing that we were working on was partnering with a Center for Nonprofit Excellence that will give a free consultation to be able to help an organization come together and be an effective nonprofit. And there was one other thing we were talking about yesterday. It'll come to me. I see there's another question. Are any of the organizations assisting in the implementation of your action plan? The organizations that came to the table to put this together may be offering some funding because they, as we said earlier, there was a lot of fractured parts to this, and identifying a central agency to be what we call the fiscal receiver or receive the funding to be able to accomplish these goals was what the position that Allies is in. Would you like to address that as well?
I think you covered it.
Oh, okay.
Good job.
Are there any other subsets or any other more detailed ways that you would like to have these questions answered? Okay. Well, it's been a really interesting journey for me as a self-advocate, because when I first started to get better, to have improvement to my health, because I sustained a brain injury when I was 28 years old, and I'm now, I'll date myself, I'm 60, but I'm vibrant 60. I experienced only about 7 or 8 years ago an improvement to my health and to my ability, and I felt that my journey had been so difficult. Why had it taken me 25 years to discover what was out there that could help me find my way as a person with a disability, not only health-wise, but also in community? So it's been a very interesting process to go from knowing nothing to finding my way in the physical health realm and the behavioral health realm, and then get well enough to be able to figure out, well, how do I fit into this world of disability? How can I make this experience for others an easier path? So my inspiration became one of wanting to see it not be so hard for others. So my passion comes from, how can it be different for someone else? I got better, I'm really lucky. I can use the tools that I've developed, and I can use the perspective that I've developed and bring that to the table. So that's one of the things I feel I bring as an individual. What do you feel that you bring as an individual to this? Cynthia or Lindsay, would you like to talk about what you bring? Or Mariella? One of the things I think Mariella really brings to this, and Adam does too, is the work that they do through Parents Reaching Out, working with parents of children with disabilities, which brings a unique perspective.
And also we work with youth with disabilities. We do have a charge to work with youth in transition and adults. So the topic of self-advocacy is extremely important to us. In addition, we do have parents that have disabilities themselves, so they might need extra support or different type of support.
One of the things that I just see mentioned by Barbara Ibanez to everyone is that the New Mexico Developmental Disabilities Planning Council, or DDPC, which was one of the key players in our meetings, our collaborations, they've been able to take a lot of the things that came out of these two very long, very intensive, very work-focused meetings and incorporated them into the action plan that they've put together for the projecting what they'll be doing in the next 5 years. So that's an example of how many groups came together and helped a larger agency see where they need to go to help satisfy the needs of who they serve.
And I think it's so super important that at these two meetings we had individuals representing organizations, and we also had independent self-advocates, and I just think that's so great because everybody has something to contribute, if it's expertise because of your profession or if it's just your personal experience as someone with a disability. It's all just as important, and it was really beautiful to be a part of those meetings and see everyone speaking up and saying their piece. It was great.
I was going to say that I've experienced my own disabilities throughout my life since the time I was born as a brand new baby to right now, almost 48 years of my life. And my mom taught me a lot. I learned a lot from so many of my teachers and other people I knew throughout my life. When I was growing up in New York, then Phoenix, Arizona, then over here, and I learned a lot since I started to work here almost 8 years ago in November. Can't believe that. I have experienced a lot of advocacy work and being as a volunteer back in Phoenix and over here, and I learned about public speaking and helping other people deal with their own personal experience with disability, with all kinds of disability and things like that, long list of things. And I learned a lot from teachers that I knew from special ed. Sorry to say, Barbara, I know you don't like that word, but sorry. But and I knew from school when I was growing up in high school and other schools and regular high school, and thanks to them, it goes to stay in school, and my mom helped me out. And able to graduate on time like everybody else, and things like that.
I think that's one of the, just a perfect example of how we take our life experience, we bring it to the table, and then we try and turn that life experience and how we went through something and turn it into an action that helps someone else experience the successes that Cynthia's talking about, and the feeling of inclusion that Lindsay's talking about, and the sense of for instance, myself feeling beaten down and losing all my self-esteem, and then trying to find some way that I could find meaning in my life again. Because I started out in a very, very robust career, and then I was struck down by an accident, and then I had to climb my way out of being able to do nothing to finding myself able to do something, but my identity was not the same as it was when I had my robust career, so I had to redefine myself and find a new direction. And what Cynthia's talking about is that finding that personal direction, and that leads us toward wanting to make change occur. So I think everybody brings that kind of energy to this, and that's one of the great things about our group.
And I never experienced being a person without a disability because I was born with mine, and my mom unfortunately got sick during pregnancy, and I never knew what's life without disability because I knew what life with disability, and it's interesting how life plays out.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions for us?
I don't have a question. My name is James. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
Hi, James.
Yeah. I was invited, to this through ARC in New Mexico, and I have a daughter with disabilities. She has Down syndrome. And listening to all of you people with the passion and the drive and the willingness to make change and to help my daughter and myself to achieve a better life and help her develop into to achieve what she can achieve. And I'd like to thank you guys. And I would like to participate more, and anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Thank you. What you've said is the icing on the cake for all of us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. And what you can do to get involved is take down the email for myself or for Lindsay.
Or both.
Or both, and we'll connect you. And also you can connect through the ARC and through New Mexico Allies for Advocacy. There's no membership fees. We call our members stakeholders. And we're going to be at the Southwest Conference on Disabilities at the Albuquerque Convention Center. The conference starts in full on October 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. And we'll be there, and we'll be signing people up to join in our stakeholder meetings, which are held regularly, and where we plan the kinds of things that this group is going to do. And we'd love to have anyone and everyone join us. Whether you're listening to this at another date, please get in touch with us. Whether you're listening today, like you, James, it takes a village. It really takes a village.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
All right. Next slide.
No, thank you guys.
Mutual Admiration Society.
There you go.
Sounds like you're just a great parent. Well, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all today. Thank you for your time. To the Southwest Institute for helping this project be a reality of bringing together Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico to work on our projects in each of our states and to unify the southwestern states. And there'll be a short evaluation form right after the webinar is over. It will come up automatically on your screen. And please fill that out, because your evaluation results are what allow us, the Southwest Institute, to keep bringing programs like this to you. And next year, starting in January, there will be more webinars being put on by New Mexico, by Utah, by Colorado, and by Arizona on a number of topics. I know that in our New Mexico topics will cover fundraising and grant writing. And we'll be doing 2 webinars, I believe, each state. is doing 2 webinars, so there'll be 8 webinars to watch. And like I said, you can send people to listen to them at any time at their leisure. They just won't be able to interact live. And the webinar that New Mexico did earlier this year during the summer was all about some of the public policy work that this group has worked on to try and affect laws in New Mexico and also public policy at the federal level. Next slide.
Oh.
Well, we don't have next webinar dates in here yet, so our next slide, Mariella, we'd like to have you roll out all the thanks to all the different organizations that have cooperated together in making this presentation a reality. We have the Southwest Alliance Technical Assistance Center, and if you'd like to reach them, Juliana's email is on there at j.huerena@swifamilies, FAMILIES.org, and her phone number is 602-235-0354, extension 802. And I apologize, I neglected to say the emails of the individuals that were on an earlier slide. It's Nat Dean, and my email is natdean, NATDEAN, at hub, as in the hub of a wheel, west, as in the direction, .com. And Lindsay, your emails are?
My emails, I've got 2 of them up there. One of them is Lindsay, LINDSAY, .Sloan, S as in Sam, LOAN, at state.nm.us. And then the other one is Warrior Queen 4, WARRIORQUEEN, the number 4, at gmail.com. And I can be reached at either one of those.
I only have the one. So Mariella,
That's complicated that way.
yeah, it's easier. Mariella, you can tell us all the organizations that helped bring this together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nat. So the New Mexico Allies for Advocacy, of course, the Center for Self-Advocacy, the Administration on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, the Association of University Centers on Disability, the ARC of New Mexico, the Administration for Community Living, the Center for Development and Disabilities, Parents Reaching Out, and the Developmental Disabilities Planning Council. That's all.
Thank you to everyone for supporting this, and thank you for attending today, and thank you, George, for being our host out there in Arizona. So we covered some ground here.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. All right, we're closing it out. Thank you guys for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.